Welcome to day one of the Hero broadcast with me, Suppoman. The title of this broadcast is known as Starting from Nothing, and that's essentially what I am doing with this podcast. Now, if any of you are familiar with my work, whether it's on YouTube, Udemy, or Skillshare, you will know that I call myself a superhero. Whether that's your superhero on YouTube or your superhero instructor on Udemy or Skillshare, I class myself, or my kind of alias, I suppose, is as a superhero. And that is the originator of the Hero broadcast. So essentially, it's called the Hero broadcast because it's about finding your inner hero. Now, this isn't going to be based on Rhonda Byrne's famous book, The Hero. This is going to be purely from the heart and from my own experience, and hopefully really to empower you to find the inner hero within yourself. So this podcast is named Starting from Nothing. And like I say, that is the position I am in right now. If you enjoy this podcast, will you please leave a like if you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube, and leave a dislike if you hate the subject, if you never want me to talk about anything like that again, or leave an angry face on Facebook if you feel that way too. So starting from nothing. Okay, this is something that I can relate to time and time again. Just 5 years ago, I was working for a technology company. I was paid quite well. I had a very senior management job. And then one day I was made redundant. And I left pretty much the same day. So I was informed of the redundancy and I left the same day. And I've got to tell you, it was one of those experiences I'll never forget. And the funny thing is that it happened after I'd experienced some real personal loss in my life. The partner I was with at the time had just had a miscarriage, and she was quite far along in her pregnancy. And I had taken just a bit of time off to cope with the distress and grief that came with the loss of the unborn baby. And what happened is that I came into work the next day. HR called me into a meeting, and I thought to myself that they were just going to ask how I am. And what actually happened is that they said, "We're thinking of making your position redundant." And it was the most kind of speechless moment I'd ever had. I was like, really? After I've just come back from grieving, from losing an unborn child, of all that hope, and now you're basically taking away my job, which was basically providing all of my income. And I have a child with someone else, and at the time he was 5 years old, and I was providing for the household. And all of a sudden they just said, boom, we're thinking of making your job redundant. And what they actually meant to say was, we are making your job redundant, but they didn't phrase it to me that way. So, as a result, I just kind of, I had the typical reaction. I was kind of like, you can't do this to me. I've given all my best work to you. But it didn't really matter, because they'd made their mind up. Okay, so I had to accept what was told to me and basically deal with the uncertainty of what was coming next. Okay, I had been established in this company for a good 4 years. I'd worked my way up in the organisation. People had loved what I did, and I personally was proud of what I did. It was certainly the best work that I had carried out for an employer in my whole life. And I had to accept that was now finished. So, the next day was getting my head around the whole thing. And then I decided to kind of plough a lot of my efforts into making apps. So I made apps for the Apple Store and for the Google Play Store. And it was completely free. What I was making didn't require anybody to pay to get the apps, and it certainly didn't have any ads on it, so I was getting nothing for it. My thinking was that I could provide apps that people would enjoy and the money would come later. A bit like the Facebook story, the Twitter story, the Snapchat story, the Instagram story. They all went that way, where they were just providing a free service, a great service, to their users, and then eventually when they got millions and millions of people downloading their apps, somebody would buy it, then they'd make the money, and then there would be some kind of monetization strategy later on. So I did that for 2 years. I created apps. I went into a loss making these apps because I paid a developer to make the apps for me. And so I was making a loss. When the apps went out, I was making no money. And essentially, it was just a loss-making company. But I thought, if I invest everything right now, then the money will come later. And so I spent a lot of money on advertising, on app advertising, on everything I could to kind of get my app somewhere. And after 2 years of doing it, eventually something happened. Okay, what happened is that, and it all came as a result of something extremely negative. So there was somebody, a hacker, an ethical hacker, had found my app, and I said that this app makes your messages disappear forever. It was a bit like Snapchat, but there was text rather than pictures. Well, it was pictures and text. And Snapchat only had pictures at the time. So I made this kind of bold claim that the messages would disappear. And this hacker found my app, he hacked into it, and he realised, or he researched, that the messages didn't disappear and that they went into some kind of filter or some kind of area where they didn't fully disappear. And so he called me out on it on Twitter and Facebook, and he said, I think that you should reconsider the security of your app because it's not working. And I ignored him because I didn't want to listen to the criticism. And I ignored him for a couple of weeks. And then he just put it all online. He said, I tried to contact this app developer or this app creator. He's not listening. So this is the research that I have discovered. Now, at the time, the app was kind of quite popular. So what happened is that he put this on Twitter, and I was afraid that my users would see it and stop using the app. So I went on to Twitter and I threatened him. I said to him, if you don't take this off by 11 p.m. tonight, I am going to take legal action. And so what he did was he then went onto Reddit, or one of these communities that has a load of information security experts on it. It was basically his tribe. And he told them what I'd said. And so they all bombarded me en masse on Twitter. I got death threats, I got abuse, tweet after tweet after tweet. Literally every second I was getting a notification beep on my phone, and there was another tweet, a retweet, reply. All sorts of different notifications were coming through kind of every couple of seconds. And over the course of an hour, I'd had about 300 retweets of my threatening legal action, and all these people abusing me, and they were being retweeted as well, and they were getting other people in the hacking sector interested. And basically 24 hours later, my website accounts were hacked and they were all redirected. So basically, instead of showing a landing page, it was redirected to the most disgusting picture. I'm not going to say what it is, but it was a disgusting picture. It was a biological picture. It was absolutely putrid. Okay, and so I suffered that humiliation, and then they hacked into all my other things. They hacked into my Twitter, and they were saying, that I think I'm an idiot for how I responded. They were basically writing these responses for me. And it was a really horrible time, and two major blogs at the time anyway, which was ZDNet, or ZDNet, and TUAW, which is now called Engadget, they wrote about this whole scandal and told everybody, okay? And my app was just, it was basically like a ghost town for the rest of the time. I thought it might do us some favours. Didn't actually happen. Anyway, After I managed to overcome that, I managed to get access to my Twitter and access to my website. After all this happened, my app went to number 1 in the UK App Store. Number 1. And I thought, this is it, you know. I had 20,000 people downloading the app every day. And I thought, this is it. This is where it starts. This is where, you know, the fame will come, the money will come. You know, the recognition will all come. And actually what happened is that my hosting provider, I went with shared hosting at the time because there wasn't enough activity on the app to basically justify going with a dedicated host. So what happened is that the capacity of my shared host was completely overrun. Okay, so the server provider basically suspended my account 5 days of me being at number 1. I didn't move. I was ahead of Facebook, WhatsApp, Flappy Bird. I was ahead of Clash of Clans. I was ahead of them all. I was number 1. Free app on the App Store. I had radio interviews that week. I had, you know, The Sun, which is a major newspaper in the UK, interviewing me at my house. You know, with all their photographers with me. I was kind of thinking this is the beginning of something huge. And so they the server provider suspended my account, which stopped my app from working because none of the kind of back-end operations were working because they suspended the account. Everything stopped working. So the app went from 1 to 10 to 80 to 500 to nowhere to uncharted within a week. I went from hero to 0 in literally 1 week. And that destroyed me, really. I tried a couple more apps to try and, using my experience of what had happened, to try and make another, you know, good app. But what happened is that nothing really happened. So my savings, which had been whittled down ever since I lost my job and was made redundant, was nearly at 0. Okay, I was virtually done and dusted. It was nearly over. I had to get a part-time marketing job, and then a job with a solicitor's company, and it all kind of, and I hated it. I hated every moment of it. I hated being managed. I hated going back to being an employee again after doing it for myself for so long. And so I was at a kind of crossroads. I was thinking, right, I either go for broke with something, or I become an employee forever, because I'm not exactly, you know, 20 anymore. I'm not going to, you know, I don't think that my chances of achieving the fame that I did with my app will happen again. The chances of it happening again are getting more and more remote the older and older I get. So I was at this crossroads. What do I do? And that was when I found Udemy. And Udemy has been, without a doubt, the thing that saved me. I was also inspired to go on Udemy. I was inspired by 2 people, both of which are no longer on Udemy. But the one that was banned from Udemy, who's now actually a friend of mine, Jerry Banfield, he motivated me to get onto Udemy because I saw a video where somebody had made a Facebook course a few days ago. They weren't very well known on Udemy, and yet their course was above his. And I thought, wow, the barrier to entry is extremely low. I thought, what if I could have a Facebook course? I know about Facebook ads. What if I could have a Facebook course ahead of Jerry? That would be insane. He's made 6 figures from that. So if I'm ahead of him, when people type in Facebook on Udemy, that could be incredible. So what I did is that I decided to put together a Udemy course. And that was where everything kind of just changed. Okay, I put on an Instagram course on first because I wanted to kind of get used to the whole process of putting a course on Udemy. And it wasn't what I expected. I uploaded the course. I think I made $2 the same day that it was approved. I'd made about $15 within a couple of days, and I thought, Well, this isn't necessarily what I thought Udemy would be. I thought Udemy would probably be instant success, hundreds of pounds or dollars within days, and that trajectory would just keep on going, with time. But what happened was is that I actually joined Udemy at the exact time they had just launched a new pricing policy, which was where Udemy instructors had to price their course in between $20 and $50 with a maximum 50% discount. So if your course was $20, you could discount to $10. If your course was $50, you could discount to $25. And it was fixed as to your price ending in a 0 or a 5. So you couldn't even kind of put it for $22 or even for $38, so that $19 would be the half price. No, it had to be 0 and 5, which was opposite to what Udemy was before the price change, which is where you had 9s at the end of prices, and you could even have a course selling for $9 during the deep discounts. But the maximum would be $10, which is not what students were used to. So it was a very slow burner. So if I just show you my Udemy earnings, you can see that, that's the picture now, which is all very fine and good. But when I first started on Udemy, I put my course on the 5th of April or the 9th of April 2016. And over the course of the rest of the month, I only made $53, okay, which wasn't what I was expecting. I thought I'd make $50 on the first day. But I didn't. I made $53 the whole month. And then the next month, because of students getting used to the pricing change, I made $141 the next month. And I was thinking, am I ever going to get to a point where I start something and be successful? Because I was at that impatient crossroads where I kind of thought, I'm going to have to get a job soon unless I can make some magic happen. And I thought Udemy could be that magic. But it turned out that, with $50 one month, $144 the next month, that was never going to happen. And then the month after that, $137. And I just thought, I didn't even make as much as I did in May. And then I just thought I just thought to myself, well, looks like I've missed the boat on this one too. The days of people earning 6 figures and becoming overnight successes are gone. And I thought, I've missed the boat. Just like I did with apps, I was about 2 years too late. Just like I did with websites, I was about 4 years too late with them. And I thought with Udemy, again, I've come too late to the party. And so I was kind of thinking of giving up. Lots of instructors around me in the Udemy studio were saying, oh, this pricing change is naff, it's rubbish, it's killed our businesses. And then I decided to go against what people were doing. People were holding back on advertising. People were holding back on making Udemy courses. The feeling I was getting is that this pricing change was demotivating people to the extent they weren't actually doing anything on Udemy. So I decided, actually it was on the advice again of Jerry, because Jerry said something along the lines of, you've got to see the value of Udemy being down as a good thing. You've got to see that there being a lack of sales is a good thing. And so what I did was I decided to invest all of my energy actually into making courses. And by June I had 4 courses. By July I had about 6 courses. And then in August I had about 7-8 courses. And it was in this point, because you can see there's a bit of a jump here where you could see there was potentially a bit of a turnaround, or my courses were maturing a bit and getting a bit higher up in the search, that this was double. July was double June. And then all of a sudden, in August, Udemy did quite possibly the greatest transformation that could possibly happen. And I kind of was amazed because they called me and they said, we're going to be doing this price change. You should be looking at your courses and thinking how you're going to price them. And I felt really appreciative that Udemy had gotten in contact with me. And I thought I felt kind of special in the whole process, because I thought Udemy contacted me and I'm only a new instructor. But anyway, they contacted me. I had a think. I changed the price. I made the prices what I think what I thought would be good prices. And then the last week of August, they implemented the new policy, which was essentially that you could price your course anywhere between $20 and $200, with deep discounts coming back. The kind of $9-ish sales. It's not $9, it's $10 now, but they're coming back. And all of a sudden, last week of August was just incredible. I was at the point that the pricing change come up, around about the same point I was in July. I was about 350 or so. And then I made 350 in that final week. And I thought, oh my God. Because I'd made courses. I'd invested time in making courses. So all of a sudden, now all these courses were higher in value, perceived value, because the prices went up, the overall price went up. And so what happened since then was a trajectory of improvement. So in September, 1,200. In October, 1,400. And then this is an exceptional month because November is where Black Friday happens, which is one of the most famous sale times on Udemy. And I got $3,000. And I couldn't believe it. Literally in the space of 4 or 5 months, from $300 to $3,500. All of a sudden, everything changed. Okay, starting from nothing wasn't as harsh and as horrible as it could have been if the price change had not come to save me. I don't know where I'd be now, but I don't think I'd be anywhere near the level that I'm at now. But this price change saved me, really, and it made the journey of starting from nothing, from being very uncertain, me feeling quite nervous, to me feeling quite demotivated, to then putting all my chips in and enjoying the ride even though I was getting no money for it, to then all of a sudden the money making it enjoyable plus me enjoying it. So I didn't have the burden. But then, and this is the funny thing, I made 3,500, 2,500, 3,000, in February it being a short month, under 2,000, and then in March over 3,000, and then the month just gone, literally 6 days ago, I made nearly 3,500, nearly exactly the same as I made in November. So in a non-sale, well, there were sales happening, but in a non-famous sale month, I made nearly the equivalent of what I made in Black Friday. So it has now I've kind of gotten to a level. My courses have matured over the course of a year. And, the whole starting from nothing in a position of uncertainty has now turned into this really exciting journey, something that motivates me to consistently turn up. Like I was at the beginning of the journey when I was making courses for the hope that it would be like how it is now. And so this has kind of encouraged an onward motivation. And as you can see at this point now, and you can see this graph if you're watching this, as you can see, look at the kind of, it's reached a point where it's kind of gone over this $2,000 line, which is so super exciting. And, I am personally so happy that I'm in this position. But it didn't come easy. The whole position of starting from nothing really challenges you from the position of being completely uncertain of where things can go. And I personally thought to myself that it could just continue going the way it did prior to August. But I dedicated myself full time to Udemy. And I think I still would, even if the price was what it was. I just don't think I'd have been as successful or made as much money as I have so far. So, starting from nothing essentially is an exciting thing. It's exciting because you don't know where it's going to go. And the uncertainty is exciting. And the uncertainty is what makes me want to work. Okay, so when you're starting from nothing, and a lot of people they have to because of circumstances that have happened that are very similar to mine, just being made redundant just like that from a well-paid job, from earning well into 5 figures to 0, I felt to myself that life kind of as I knew it was over, unless I could get a decent job. But I didn't really want to, because I didn't want to be in the shackles, I suppose, of an employer. And if anything went wrong, I could just be dropped, just like the way I was. Even though I gave 3 years of great service to them, I could just be dropped. And the same thing could happen even on a website like Udemy, where my work, I suppose, is on a third-party site. But this has allowed me to create an online teaching business. I've got a website now which allows me to... That's my cat in the background, jumping at the door. Anyway, so I've got a website that allows me to kind of sell on my own, even though the content is still hosted by Udemy, but it's still a platform for me to grow and get better at what I'm doing and to be better at this teaching. But this month, or the month just gone, marked my first anniversary on Udemy, and I made $20,000 in my first year at Udemy, where a year ago I thought, having experienced what was happening with the pricing change, that I'd probably be lucky to make 10,000, maybe even 5,000. Because as the trajectory as it was in the low hundreds, I thought my career in online teaching is dead and buried before I even knew it. But I've learnt a lot over this time. I've learnt a lot about promotions, about how to promote my videos and how to promote my courses. And this has been a wild ride. So the position of starting from nothing has helped me enormously with succeeding. The uncertainty made it exciting. The position of being in a place of having nothing really to go on. I had absolutely no courses at the beginning point. That position made me fight. So I had the excitement, and it allowed me to fight to get to the position where I am now. So starting from nothing is arguably the most exciting time, and the position where you fight and enjoy what you get from your fighting. Because I know that there are certainly times, I haven't experienced this yet, but there are times when all of a sudden everything goes well and the fight kind of goes. So the position of being hungry, having nothing and fighting for something really makes you more determined to achieve. And this is my first podcast. I'm starting from a position of nothing with my podcast. I'm going to have no podcast listeners. I've never done a podcast before. And hopefully I am going to make something big out of it. But the position of being at nothing at this point with podcasting makes it very exciting for me to make something of it and makes me want to fight. And this is why I have brought this up on day one. And this is why there's a day one. Because I am planning on making podcast after podcast about how things are going and continuing, hopefully, to bring you some really motivational content. So I'm going to leave it from here today, but essentially speaking, the position of starting from nothing is super exciting. And I've got to say, I was really excited and determined when I got out of bed, when I managed to muster up the motivation to make a go of things on Udemy, when things were looking so terrible and the situation looked so futile. So starting from nothing is really a key motivator in life. So I hope that you've loved this. Please do leave a like. If you hated it, leave a dislike. I appreciate your feedback either way, and drop me a comment and let me know what you thought. In the meantime, I've been Suppoman, and I'll see you in the next podcast.